This lesson is special segments in circles. We're going to talk about different types of segments in the circle and their relationships to one another. So if you have intersecting chords, the interior segments are formed by two intersecting chords like this, and when you have that, then the product of the lengths of the parts of one chord is equal to the product of the lengths of the parts of the second chord. What that means is if you take the chords and divide them, divide segment AB into lengths A and B, divide segment CD into lengths C and D, then A times B equals C times D. Multiply the parts, and they equal each other. Sometimes you have intersecting secants and tangents. So if you have two secants that are intersecting, or a secant and a tangent that's intersecting, their segment measures work in a certain way as well. With a secant, anytime you have a secant, you have the outside portion and you have the whole portion. This one down here has an outside portion and the whole portion. So with the secants, their relationship goes outside times the whole thing equals outside times the whole thing. When you have a secant and a tangent, the secant is still outside times the whole thing, but for the tangent gets squared. So for this one, outside times the whole thing for the secant equals the tangent squared. So depending on the types of segments you have, use the formula that matches it. So if two secant segments are drawn to a circle from an external point, then the products of the lengths of the secant and their exterior parts are equal. And that's what we just went through. Outside times the whole thing equals outside times the whole thing. Here, A is outside, E is the whole thing, C is outside, F is the whole thing. So A times E equals C times F. For this example, find X if the measure segment BC is 6 centimeters, measure segment AD is 2 centimeters, and the measure segment AB is 4 centimeters. Find X. Well, I have two secants, so we'll use the formula outside times the whole thing equals outside times the whole thing. On the top secant, the outside part is 4, and the whole thing is 4 plus 6, which is 10. That equals the outside of the bottom secant is 2 times the whole secant is 2 plus x. Do segment addition there, and that is 2 plus x for the whole thing. Just like the 10 was a 4 plus 6. For the other one, 2 plus x for the whole thing. Now solve. 40 on the left. Distribute here. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 2 times x is 2x. Subtract 4, and divide by 2. And x is 18, and the label would be centimeters. So when you have secants intersecting a circle, do the outside part times the whole thing equals the outside part times the whole thing. When you have a secant and a tangent, once again, the square of the length of the tangent equals the product of the length of the secant and its exterior segment. So we're squaring the tangent, and we're doing outside times the whole thing for the secant. Here, the length of the tangent is A, so A will be squared. The outside of the secant is B, and the whole secant is D. So that'll be B times D. Tangent squared equals outside times the whole thing. So for this example, if AD is 9, AC is 25, find X. Well, we have a tangent and a secant, so tangent squared equals outside times the whole thing for the secant. The tangent is X, so that'll be X squared. The outside part of the secant is 9, and the whole secant is 25. Solve for X. 9 times 25 is 225. And square root each side. And X is 15. And the label will be centimeters. So when you have a tangent, square the tangent. And when you have a secant, do outside times the whole thing. If we do one more here, let's find X. Remember, when you have chords in a circle like this, you take their parts, multiply them together, and they equal each other. So on this chord, the parts are 7 and 10. And on the other chord, the parts are 12 and X. So 7 times 10 equals 12 times X. And we'll solve for X. 7 times 10 is 70. 12 times X is 12X. Divide both sides by 12. And if you want to go to the nearest tenth, X is about 5.8. So when you have chords that intersect like this, the way they split up, part times part on one equals part times part on the other. And that'll do it.